things changed in terms of athlete activism?
Well, I think you could say that it's changed in recent history to the point where it seems like it's the expectation now. If you're a leader on a team leader, particularly the black ones, which is unfair, I'm sure we'll get into that at some point, you're expected to take a position. You're expected to say something. I think Patrick Mahomes knew he had to say something at this point. Not to suggest that he doesn't believe what he's saying, but I think he knew he had to. But I always think back to Howard Bryant's book, The Heritage, when we talk about this. And his book is about the heritage of athletes being on the forefront, black athletes being on the forefront of fighting for social justice. And it goes all the way back to Paul Robeson and Jim Brown, Arthur Ashe, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and to the current times, people like Maya Moore. Like, for black athletes, it's always felt like an expectation. And I think one thing that's slightly changing is it feels like the white athletes are also expected to at least say something. While they're not expected, there's no obligation for them to carry the same burden as the black athletes. It feels odd when you're silent in a time right now. So we're changing to a point, with the exception of that one period in there that I think Howard points out in his book, where OJ kind of took the "I'm not black, I'm OJ" period, where that took all the way up until, I guess, around the Jordan era, where it felt like the athletes wanted to be kind of blank slates so that endorsers could come around and fans could project whatever they wanted on them. That was a lull in the period of the heritage. But other than that, the grand majority of the history of athletes, black athletes, they have taken on the burden of leading forward and being outspoken about injustice in this country. And it's something, as a black athlete myself, or a former athlete, I'm still black, am very proud of having been a part of that, and proud of guys carrying it forward, like Colin Kaepernick and Kenny Stills and all of those guys. And they've made me proud, and I'm happy to see the white guys start to come out more now. But I think it's important to note that it's safe right now. And those white athletes haven't really taken the risk that the black athletes have, and I would love to see them sacrifice or risk in a way that shows what they say that they stand for is actually what they stand for.
It's not just safe, Dominique. It's unsafe not to in ways.
Right.
So there's been a tipping point. So I don't know how much credit you want to give to the white athletes in terms of whatever kind
credit,
of
Max. Don't scare
moral
them off.
fiber.
Don't scare them off, Max. We got to give them a little credit. Pat them on the back. They might get scared.
As I was saying, I don't know about how much credit you want to give them in terms of their moral fiber and their courage, but you do have to acknowledge that this is what's happening, right? Look, black athletes, I go back to shut up and dribble again. And you think, okay, you're privileged. What are you doing talking about these issues? No, precisely that. You're privileged. You're in a privileged position. What are you going to do with your privilege? I'm talking to black athletes now. And what they have decided is, we're going to speak up. And one of the ways, now the problem is the white mainstream, because there are a lot of them, and they vote as a monolith, right, in lockstep. Look at the last national election. They weren't trying to hear it. White people weren't trying to hear it. Except that black athletes have also been talking to their white counterparts who are also athletes. And once they started to listen, I think white people who are otherwise deaf to it maybe start to listen too. Now, Dominique, you're absolutely right, I believe, that part of it is it's not just happening top down in that respect, at least in terms of from celebrity to your working person. It's also happening the other way. There's especially with the murder of George Floyd, that was a powder keg that a lot of stuff underneath is now coming to the surface, and now it's a safe place for white athletes to be. So I'm not suggesting that it's merely leadership. There's some kind of a feedback loop there. But when the question is asked, how have things changed for athlete activism? In fact, the number one change I see is that white athletes have joined their coworkers who are not white in amplifying their message. And that has been a change, whether it's you can look at it through the prism of leadership or the fact that that's actually a safe place for them to be. That's a change.
Listen, I agree with both of you guys. I think the biggest thing that's really helped as far as athletes being activists and pushing the message forward in regards to these issues has actually been what everybody has in their possession, the cell phone. Think about this. Black folks have been telling these type of stories as it relates to police brutality all the time for years, for decades. But now that these things are on the forefront where the public can actually see by recordings what is going on, now you have more of a mainstream movement. There's more of a mainstream coalition. And with the murder of George Floyd being front and center and people seeing exactly what's going on out here, now I think people, all athletes, whether it be black or white, are actually building up the courage to say, you know what? Yeah, this is a human rights issue that everyone should be called upon to step up to the forefront and make their voices heard. And I think to me, that is the biggest difference from maybe when Muhammad Ali and some of the other people were protesting to this point now is because of the advent of cell phones and being able to record these type of incidences and putting it on Jump Street in front of everyone. Now people can understand and see exactly what black folks have been talking about for decades.
Yeah, and I think that
Dominique, I think yeah, good.
I think that also it just goes back to me always for the sacrifice and the willing to risk. And you think about Tommy Smith and John Carlos and Ali and all the athletes that came before that we talk about, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Jim Brown, like they paid a price and they risked paying a big price. So while I'm super happy and proud of all the athletes who are speaking out today, I do think it's important to understand that the center has moved and like the safe place has moved. And I know, Max, you echoed this point. It doesn't feel like anyone is taking, or it doesn't feel as though that many players are taking those risks. And it's not my job to tell them that they should, but I think it's important that we separate we're conscious of how we talk about these athletes in regards to the other athletes in the heritage, because they're doing something different right now, sending out a statement right now, joining a protest right now, when it seems like everyone is on your side, is admirable and commendable, but it's also expected.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.